Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast. I am Louise Eddington, or Lou, and I'm an astrologer and a writer of modern astrology, Harness the Stars to find your soul's true purpose. I don't have my book with copy with me. And I offer astrology readings. I have an astrology membership site, various things. You can find it all on my website, or just search for my name and find me everywhere online. So, Jen.
So, hello everyone, I'm Jen Duchenne. I'm an Akashic reader. I come from a long line of healers, and I use all my tools. And the power of my illuminating signature cards, the illuminating journey cards. I don't have the box, but there's the back.
Yeah, well, on the website.
Yes. I provide divine soul translation, serving as a clear channel to my clients as they release emotional weight and activate fast track healing, and that illuminates a new path forward. And I help my clients express the truth of who they are in the world. And I do that through one-on-one sessions, workshops, classes, and I have a class coming up on July 11th for the Illuminating Journey Cards, the Fundamentals class. And you can find that on my website. Yes, that's me.
Okay, so we are going to be looking at then the energy between now and the partial lunar eclipse on July the 16th. But before I talk about that, there's a little bit of housekeeping as usual. We have a giveaway. We announced it at the end of the last episode, but I'm not sure everybody waited till the very end to hear that. So I'm going to announce it at the start this time. So we are offering 4 prizes, an eclipse reading for me, which will look at not just these eclipses, but also the ones in 6 months' time, which is an audio reading delivered to your inbox by Dropbox. Jen is offering a mini Akashic Records reading. Yep. Is that correct?
Yes. So that'll be a live reading. By phone.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all each offering a signed copy of one of our books, my book, Modern Astrology, and Jen's Le Chic Cocoon, not Cocoon. Oh, I swear, this eclipse that we had yesterday, I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm saying. But anyway, if you would like to enter to win one of the prizes, we are going to draw those prizes on the full moon eclipse on the 16th. And to enter, you have to go to iTunes and leave us a written review, and post it, and then send a screenshot of that review by email to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com to get 2 entries in to win a prize, or win 2 prizes even, maybe, who knows. Then you can also share our podcast on social media, and again send a screenshot of that post to us at the same email address. All names will be entered into a hat and drawn out. I'll probably get my daughter or somebody to just draw it, so it's pretty neutral. So
can I just jump in and add that for people that have already given us reviews before, if they'd like to share this on social media and send us that screenshot, then they can be entered in as well.
Of course, absolutely. They can still eligible for that second entry. And lastly, on each episode, we're going to feature a listener question. We do have a couple. We're actually going to feature both her questions because they're quite brief and both kind of related. But we do have questions from one listener today. But again, questions need to be emailed to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll speak about your questions live on air. So, on to the lunar eclipse. Well, before then, we have quite a lot of energy. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of the highlights. We're recording this on July the 3rd. And of course, in the US, it's Independence Day tomorrow. So yesterday's eclipse, we're recording the day after the total solar eclipse that we talked about last time. And of course, that was conjunct the sun of the USA, which makes this period very interesting for those of us that live here, and it affects worldwide, of course. But tomorrow, on the 4th, we have Saturn conjunct the South Node. And we'll speak to all of this. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. I'm only going to do the major ones. We have on the 8th of July, Mercury stations retrograde. On the 8th of July, Mercury conjunct Mars. On the 9th of July, Chiron or Chiron stations retrograde in Aries. Also on the 9th of July, we have first quarter moon in Libra with the sun opposing Saturn. And all this is kind of connected, of course. On the 10th of July, the sun is conjunct the North Node. And I know we've got others. 11th of July, Mars in Leo is square to Uranus in Taurus. That's kind of a little bit explosive. But at the same time is trine Chiron in Aries that is just stationed. So very kind of pressured kind of energy. On 16th of July, we have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn. Oh, and 14th of July, we have the sun opposing Pluto as well. And lastly, just after the lunar eclipse, Ceres is stationing direct at 0 Sagittarius. So we have 2 planets or cosmic bodies turning retrograde and 1 dwarf planet turning direct, as well as all these other aspects. So it's kind of a very volatile time. But the details of the partial lunar eclipse are that it's on July the 16th. It's at 10:38 p.m. Universal Time. So adjust from Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Time for your time zone. The eclipse takes place at 24 degrees and 4 minutes of Capricorn with the sun opposite in Cancer. The eclipse also takes place like within hours or even less of mini eclipses or occultations by the moon of Saturn at 16 degrees Capricorn and Pluto at 21 degrees Capricorn, with the South Node sandwiched in between those two. So what that looks like is the moon covers over those areas, and then the lunar eclipse happens. Venus is conjunct the North Node on this eclipse, but this is a South Node eclipse because the moon is on the South Node. So it's very much a releasing energy. It's also, the nodes are also square Pallas Athena in Libra, and the sun and the moon are square to Eris in Aries. And that's pretty much exact as well. So there's a lot going on. So Jen, do you want to pull a card first before we dive into the energies? And I did pull a card too, but I'm going to let you show yours first, if that's right.
So yes, so I pulled a card from the Illuminating Journey cards, and the one that came up is this one, 17. And I find it kind of fascinating because we already have a reference to the 17 in the South Node and North Node at 17 degrees, and that's a key number for manifesting and kind of balancing things out. So, you know, it's the idea of beginning something new in the sense of putting down a legacy. For me, I feel like this card is speaking to ownership, to the recognition of who we are, like the place we take, the figure in this, for those of you who can't see it, there's a figure sitting with kind of this light on the one hand going down and the like beam of light, and the other one going up, so pointing to the heavens, around some various things, treasures and telescopes, etc. And in the background, there is a planet, there's some kind of what do you call that, a spaceship of some kind, this mountain with stars around it, there's water falling everywhere, and there's a pool that's shaped as a figure in the number 8, which is really interesting. So it feels like there is a lot of energy moving, as if the earth is moving, as if things are changing physically. The physical landscape is changing, the world we're in. And that has a lot to do with, if we put ourselves in the place of that figure and we say, this is me, what am I looking at? How am I living my life? What am I perceiving? And what am I accepting as real? So this feels very much this opportunity to shine a light on what it is that you're focused on, what you're intending, what is it that you're building around, and allowing the light from source to come into you, so you're not being distracted by the idea of what's around you, but you're partaking or creating that through the peace, the inner peace you find by balancing the two ideas of being a soul in a physical body, a mind that has to manifest. So what are you creating in this time?
And I love that it is kind of, that you mentioned the earth kind of moving, and the water and the earth in there as well, because we've got Capricorn and Cancer in this lunation, that and we have earth and water, and I literally do feel like these eclipses are pretty seismic, and the next ones, but that's because of all the other stuff that's happening in this major time of change that we're going through. So the earth literally could move with all the energies coming up, going on in the next few weeks, but it's, well, of course, it's as without, so within, isn't it? So it's
right.
Kind of earth moving.
Yes, and speaking of that, the earth moving, it does and is moving all the time. It's our construct of what we think is happening that is actually impacting us. Like what we think is happening or where we're focusing is what is shifting us or keeping us stationary.
Oh, absolutely. I just kind of meant there could be real earthquakes coming up.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I definitely agree.
Or some kind of seismic movement.
Right. Movement, water, earthquake.
Yeah, tidal wave kind of energy. It doesn't mean there's going to be a huge one, but there could be an uptick in them. So also fire energy right now over before the eclipse, particularly with the Mars and Mercury in Leo. I think the fire energy is really high, and of course Ceres stationing at 0 of a fire sign as well. I've noticed an uptick in the news of wildfires starting already, and it's some of them were a bit uncomfortably close to where we live. So
it's terrifying.
Yeah, they're out. They're not that big, but it's still, you just think, oh, there's too many. Anyway, I pulled a card too, and Venus is conjunct the North Node on this eclipse in Cancer, and I picked the Venus in Cancer card, not by design.
By design.
It's by accident. And this represents love, but it's kind of the love that's nurturing, creative, inspirational, clear, and fulfilling. This is love that involves clear communication with those that you love, and to my mind, it really is about focusing on those relationships that provide the love you need as well as the love you give. So if a relationship isn't fulfilling, this is not the card for it. This is focus on those that do lift you up in life and that you are able to lift up to. So and then look at that overflowing energy. It's a lovely card, actually, but it is asking you where to focus, I think. So yeah.
Good. So there's a synergy between the two cards there.
Definitely. There always is.
Indeed.
Funny how that happens.
Yes.
So Jen, do you want to talk about the numbers?
I do. I'd love to. So I find it very exciting and interesting here. We have the 24 degrees for the sun and moon. And so 24 is a 6, 2 and 4 is 6, and then the 4 minutes. So if you had to add 24, or 2 and 4 is 6 and 4 is 10. So I like that we have this kind of that reference to the 10 from the solar eclipse and from the months and the year. We're in a 19 year, as I mentioned. This is a 19 months. So we know it's all about new beginnings. It's about shining our light in a new way, stepping up through change to become something different. Then the 24 itself is a very powerful number because it's the number that allows all abundance. 6 isn't a number of abundance. It's also a number that speaks to family love, kind of the connection with the people around you, the beauty and love of life, and nurturing yourself, which I think is part of this aspect that's happening, or is needed and required, as we've talked about. The 24 also reminds us of the abundance of the world and makes me think of the card that I just pulled, and the one that Lou pulled, because there's an illusion, or we can look at the world and say there's all this war going on, there's all this kind of suffering going on. And yes, many things are difficult and challenging, but at the same time, there's an illusion that, that we must kind of let all our energy bleed into suffering and to saving the world. We're not here to save the world. We're here to be authentic and be who we are and express who we are. And so as everything starts to kind of fall apart, the more we connect to who we are and the abundance and the beauty that's available to us in the middle of all of this, having that spiritual practice, having that practice of what is my home, beautifying what you believe is your home and your structure, the more that abundance becomes true, because it's, the idea that I'll have a bigger house, I'll have a better car, I'll have a better job, make more money, and I'll be safe. That's the illusion, because then we have to buy into someone else's idea, and they're the ones telling us we need to suffer, we need to, overwork and deplete ourselves and give without any understanding of what it means to actually give and receive, which is that energy of the 6. When you look at the 6, it's like a pregnant woman, and the 1 and the 0 connected. So it really is about birthing this sustenance for yourself. Even though all the stuff is going, or buildings, things are falling apart, what would be the thing that brings you into yourself, into the truth? What's valuable about this is the connection to people, to the people you love, to your home, to the tribe you're building. So I think that's a very powerful, significant number. I also want to mention the fact that this is happening on the 16th. And 16th is the tower in the tarot, which is, of course, interesting. So it's telling us that there are going to be towers falling, and a lot of the towers that are falling is this reliance we've had on someone else will save me. This is how the world works. Everyone stay in their place and don't do anything they shouldn't. So there's going to be a lot of shaking up of the past so that we can be illuminated to move forward. So this is also a highly intuitive number. So I would say pay attention to your intuition. When you get a bit about doing something, head down, or focusing on yourself, or maybe speaking up where you wouldn't have, setting boundaries, then follow it, right? If you feel like there's some kind of danger, then follow it. Be alert, be aware that when a building is falling down, don't stand under it. It's like, use your senses. So then we have the 7, and of course that activates the 7 of July. July is the 7th month. So this is a double 7 energy here. And then we have the 8. We have a 26 universal day. So we have the 6, 7, 8 that are activated for this moon, which is fascinating, because 6 is, like I was talking about, it's really understanding who you are at home. 7 is this intuitive intelligence that expands our minds and allows us to move forward. And 8 has this energy of leadership that leads us into creating new things. That idea of being the leader of our own life and seeing a bigger vision, seeing beyond what people around us are telling us what is happening.
I do notice as well that Jupiter and Uranus are both at 6. Jupiter at 15, which is a 6, and then Uranus
Right.
is at 6. Well, that kind of just amplifies the energy to me of
Yeah.
what you were saying, about kind of, because Uranus really shakes things up and Jupiter always goes large. So I do think things are really going to shift on these eclipses, to be honest. You're right. If I could just butt in, all that energy in Capricorn, the fact we've got and yet another occultation of Saturn and Pluto right before the eclipse means in effect we have 3 eclipses in one day, because occultations are like eclipses, and so that day, this makes this day just crazy strong. And as I mentioned in the start, this is on a south node, so it is about releasing, letting go, and a full moon is always said to be about releasing, as well. What do I need to give up? And I see it as, it's more kind of attachment. And I've been saying this to my clients and my members and things over and over. It feels to me like we're being asked to not, and I don't mean this in an ostrich burying the head in the sand kind of way, but it's to bring our focus within, to, as Jen said, to focus on self-love, so loving those that really matter, loving where you are, kind of thing, your environment, kind of. It brings to mind kind of real, kind of going back to home basics. I've actually strangely enough, with all this energy building, I am not a gardener. I have been out there more, kind of tending and touching plants, and just feeling like I need to really connect with what really matters, more than focusing on what's happening in the news, focusing, what's happening in the outer world with finances, things like that, because in the end it's going to do what it's going to do, as Jen said. So may as well focus on the things that really matter and that I can look after. So that's, I feel, what we're being asked to do as well, as we're basically in agreement, because we're being pulled to that north node in Cancer, which is next to Venus, almost exactly. And Venus represents our relationship to other people and to nature as well, and money also. So there's an element really of kind of saving, protecting, and things as well. Let go of the attachment to spending and buying more and more stuff, and just rein it in a little bit. It feels like just keep your head down and just focus on love of what's really around you.
Yes, which reminds me, the other aspect of the 6 that's so important is to be responsible. It's about responsibility, and responsibility has more to do with our responses to what we're experiencing than it is about, other people tell me this is what responsibility looks like.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because here we have all of this, the idea of the North Node being with the sun. So we kind of have a flip with that, of course, right? And that idea of what do we shine our light on? What are we kind of expanding into? For me, I always see Venus as the, it's a creative aspect of us. It's the creator within us that allows us to see the value of what there is, instead of creating a value around something that is intangible, but also in a sense useless. It's controlling us. Like many of us have this belief system around money, and I think money is wonderful, and it really is a wonderful tool, but on the other hand, it is a tool. It's not, we could actually survive very well if without a monetary system that is like this. We could have something else bordering, and we know we're moving into a different monetary system, because this is what happens when we're at a revolutionary time that we're at. The money system changes. And so what is the money really? It's a form of exchange. So
Mhm.
what are we kind of, what have we been worshiping in the sense of when you put something on a pedestal of saying, oh, this is some kind of God, this is some kind of,
Mm.
greater being that has command over me and I can't tell it what to do and I've got to behave a certain way, then we are indebted to it, which
Mm.
is another aspect of Venus. And of course, here we have Venus at 16, the degree I was talking about, this idea of, you know, letting go of the past. It's this idea of looking to be illuminated and changing our thinking and our ideas and seeing the light about,
Mhm.
oh, I've been putting all my attention and all my devotion to something that is basically stealing my energy, taking my power. So there are so many ways, like it's not money per se, but it's people that are hungry for money or hungry to control us by dangling money and going, look, if you do
Mm.
what I want, you'll have some of this. And doing things, uh, and I think the leaders of many countries, including the US right now, is this the obsession with having power, which they believe money gives them.
Mm.
Power over others uh, is um, is kind of leading them down a path to do terrible things to others in the name of what they desire. Like it's that idea, who was it that said it? I forget. But the idea that the end justifies the means. I can do anything to anyone. Machiavelli, right? The end
Yeah.
just I can do anything I want because, you know, I have this great desire to fill up my coffers. That whole Scrooge thing, and we, to some extent, we've all kind of played along with this and done this, and so here we are with this flip of being able to go the moon, our emotions kind of the draining, the kind of pulling away, transformation of, and what is going to make it real with Saturn and all that. Also 16 degrees. I'm just noticing Saturn is also at 16 degrees. There really is the awareness of where am I putting my effort? I'm building something all the time, and
Mhm.
my discipline, is it going towards this illusion that I'll have power and I'll be able to tell everybody what to do, or I'll be powerless? Or is it going to this awareness? Like I have the equal power anyone else does, and where do I want to put this attention and
Mm.
love and balance and responsibility? What do I want to respond to?
And always when we're about to record these things, I mean, I always pay attention anyway, but I pay attention to what's coming up that we're talking about, and just in my periphery awareness even, but in this case, it's interesting that over the last couple of days, with clients in sessions, I've been called to invite them to write love letters to money. We did.
Interesting.
Were you in that class with me where we did that um with Fabeku? No, you weren't. I did one of our mentors. We've both worked with him, but I did one of his classes where it was called a money lab, and he had us writing love letters to money all the time to change your relationship with money, to personify it and develop it into a conversation and a mutual exchange. So if anybody's called to do that, I think that's a really good idea under this energy. The other thing that's been coming to my attention, just left, right, and center, is moving to, not everybody can just go and do it. So I'm not suggesting you just jump from here to miles away, but it's the idea of self-sufficiency and just growing a bit more food, or maybe having a pot of that, hydroponics, or just doing what you can to be less reliant on having to like bring money in and a job and all things like that. So I'm not suggesting you go and live in
And in it all.
yeah, but just these slight shifts, just so that you are maybe growing a bit more of your food, and so it's a little less reliant on the big box stores and going and buying all this. The Mormons in Utah where I live, they all have these big storerooms of these big barrels of food and oats and things that they have to swap out like every 6 months in case of, the world falling apart. That's taking it too far, I think. This is about being in relationship with, because then again, you're relying on something out there. You're relying on having all this money, earning all this money to go and buy all these big supplies every 6 months that go out of date, and you have to replace them.
Well, that's an illusion of safety, right? You can, and that's the thing. If you're using money to give you an illusion of safety or an illusion of power, that in the end is all bullshit. So it's like you're actually deifying an idea that's outside of you.
Yeah.
The truth is that any moment anything can happen. Like, we're not saying it's going to, but it could, right? You could have a flood, it could be a fire, your house collapses, whatever. You're not at your house when the disaster happens, and you don't have a connection to this food now you've stored. So what do you do then? When you're self-reliant, in the sense, like, you know who you are. That's the point of getting creative, really getting clear about who you are and what you desire to kind of bring into the world, to birth. What do you want to express? Who do you want to be when you're seeing people in these places where people are suffering and other people are kind of detached from the world because they, or disengaged, whatever, because they've got all this money. And this is a tribal time. So like Lou was saying, like the idea of being self-sufficient with your food, or finding other people to do things with. So it's not saying you must isolate yourself. It's just saying you must be ready to deal with what happens, instead of falling apart because someone else is suffering, or falling apart because somebody accuses you of something, or because the leader of your country does some crazy stuff. What does it mean to you, and what do you need to do? So you're not pretending it's not there, but you also know you can handle it because you have inner strength, you have inner truth, and you have resources, not only inside of yourself, not only to the universe, but to the world. The resources, this is such a huge part of, I think, the whole picture right now. Venus and even Uranus and Jupiter reminding us, what is it? How do we use what is right in front of us instead of kind of dismissing it? Nature. We have to be very aware that technology does not replace our relationship with nature. It's wonderful, but we can't get so sucked into technology that we turn into robots.
I think we're really being invited to reconnect with each other, and at a more intimate level, and with nature. You're right. And with things like cooking as well. We're becoming a society where people eat out all the time, and or buy ready meals and things like that. Even if that's you're busy and that's your life, how about one meal a week? Practice cooking something one meal a week, exploring the tastes. It's that kind of energy. Venus is all about the senses, very much so. And what you can touch and smell and taste and hear. Just sit outside and listen to the birds even, and again, we're not talking about, prepping, the prepper world. We're not talking about isolation, as Jen said. We're just talking about slight shifts of what can you do. If all you could do maybe is buy a grow bag and grow some tomatoes on your back doorstep, how about giving that a go and tasting what really good tomatoes taste like?
Absolutely. And there's so many ways you can do this in community. The idea of, buying a bunch of seeds and sharing it with your neighbors, or growing a lot of tomatoes and asking people to help themselves, or going and saying, I'll grow tomatoes if you grow cucumbers, or what will you grow? Let's pool our resources.
This community gardens. If you don't have a garden of your own, you could go and just for an hour a week say, what could I do to help pull a couple of weeds?
Exactly. I think there was I posted something about a guy who said in some town, I don't remember where, who said he noticed lots of people were going without. So he built giver's box or something, like book, the things you have for books, people
Mm-hmm.
give away books. But he built it with food items, and he just built the box, and then lots of neighbors just go and stick in different food items, and those who need it help themselves. There's like, because there's a lot of people in need. So it's this idea, like what they say, what the universe says, what people who apparently know say is, when we can be in that place of receptivity where we're connected to the universe and connected to looking at tomatoes and realizing when we tasted how delicious, or the sound of birds, or just doing some, like smiling at somebody, whatever we're doing, that allows us to receive, because we're giving with complete, we have no desire to be rewarded or recognized. We're just doing it because it feels good and feels good to us. And they say that when we're doing good deeds, or when we're telling good things to other people, there's a part of our brain that receives it as if it's been done to us, because our brain can't distinguish the difference between, if it's happening to someone else or happening to us, because we're all connected, we're all one.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the idea of, how do we change the environment outside of us? We change the environment outside of us from how we change the environment within us.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do, because everything we see is part of who we are, which is a very powerful thing to recognize. Like, somebody is not, we might not want to hang out with them, but they're representing something that is inside of us.
So, along the same lines, I already mentioned that 2 days, is it 2 days after the eclipse? One day. The day after the partial lunar eclipse series, stations direct at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, and she's very much associated with the cycles. She is kind of the great mother, Gaia, really, and she's associated with the harvest and the cycles of the seasons and things like that. And here she is at 0 of Sagittarius, looking at the bigger picture and putting Sagittarius shoots their arrows to the future. So it's higher truths. It's also natural law. Sagittarius is natural law. So we're really being more and more over this year being invited to step more into balance. That's the 8 that Jen has been talking about, where the nodes are on the eclipse. And we've got all these feminine energies coming into the chart as more and more, that are being used more in astrology as they get discovered, with Eris over there in Aries, squaring the sun and the moon on the eclipse. She shakes the table a little bit, but she is a strange figure in mythology, but in astrology I'm finding out that she is pretty much a benevolent table shaker. We've talked about her before, about how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez kind of is a representative of the Eris energy. So are some of the others of these new women in our Congress. And then on the other side, we've got Pallas Athena in Venus-ruled Aries, squaring the nodes on the eclipse. And I always think of Pallas Athena as very Venus-like, but Venus squared. She's got the spear. She's a little bit more. She's prepared to go in and fight more than Venus is. And go to. Sorry.
You said Aries in Libra. I'm just going to.
Oh, Pallas Athena. Pallas Athena in Libra. Yeah, and Pallas Athena, I always call her Venus squared. Similar symbol, but with a square, with a diamond on the top, because she's a spear. So, we've got this feminine energy or female energy squaring this eclipse in the Aries Libra axis, which is very much about the I-we axis. So who am I in connection to everybody else? So we've got that energy coming into it's I think this time between now, which is July the 3rd, and the eclipse on July the 16th, is a very volatile period, we do have, you know, planets stationing and some challenging squares and things that could be a little bit earthquakey or volcanic. Mars and Mercury meeting together. What day do they meet? Exactly on July the 8th is going to be an interesting energy, especially because it will be at 4 degrees of Leo and squaring Uranus and trine to Chiron. That could really shake the things a little bit. But with all that happening around us, I always come back, when I look at this chart, I always come back to that Cancer energy and say we're being asked to focus on that's around us. Cancer is the crab. We're kind of being asked to get into our home shell a little bit and just focus inwards. So
Yes, and what's very interesting to me, I feel like, and this has come up for me with my clients, people I talk to as well, is this aspect of Cancer, which is kind of, you know, the shell is damaged, broken. It's created an energy inside of us that is misconception, delusion, all beliefs and fears, and it's like we have to create a new shell, go somewhere else, and part of creating that shell is being able to express what is true for us. And there's a lot of this idea, like I talked about before, and I think you've mentioned as well, is this idea of wanting to save people or go, yes, this is terrible, I'm just going to hide from this, which is, we can't do that anymore, but we need to express our emotions. So this is part of releasing the idea that I have to be perfect, I can't say what I really feel. And so here we are, we can say, I really feel this certain way, or I'm suffering, and go. And for us as witnesses, not to try and go, oh no, you're okay, that isn't what's happening to you. Instead of doing that kind of thing and trying to make someone feel better with our, you know, kind of pap smear there, we're going, I am hearing you. Oh, I understand. So we're not judging them. We're not changing what they're saying. We're just letting them have their opportunity to express themselves. This is a gift, and it's a gift to be a witness of someone else's pain or expression without trying to redefine them or say, oh, you'll be okay tomorrow. Like, why? We don't need to do that. We just need to be these witnesses.
Or provide a fix.
Right, provide a fix. Exactly. Like, let me save you, let me fix you. I know what you need. We've got to really kind of step away from that idea. Like, I find sometimes I can find myself trying to, when people talk to me, I'm trying to figure out, well, what do they need? And really, that's none of my business. I do that when somebody comes to me for a session, when they pay me for my help. You know, I can do that. But when I'm just talking to people, or people to sharing things, I'm just here to be a witness. I can just stop worrying about what I think is the solution, because none of my business, and just be open and just hear and receive and know, and allow that person to heal through their expression. And for me, this is also, especially when I look at all these female signs that are coming in and being so defined and definite and warrior-like, is this breaking away of the old structure of what a female is, that a female is there to save and, you know, just keep shoveling food in people's mouths and not thinking about themselves and just doing all these things that will prop up the illusion of, you know, government and somebody who thinks they're in charge and all these idols. And that's, to me, is what these female energies are doing, this idea of series. You know, nature can be really tough. It's not just all softness and beauty. There is a harshness to nature, but it's a harshness from a place of, this is necessary. It's necessary to have that. Just like this idea of Pallas Athena, sometimes we need to do things that we may feel like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to forgive this person, or I'm not going to try to figure things out because this person's a jerk. That's great. But at the same time, that, to me, and what I feel is like important right now, is what will be a win-win situation? What will let them be heard and me be freed from the idea of needing to pacify them or needing to agree with them. Like, they can tell me their story and I can witness, and without feeling shame, you're suffering, oh, how can I save you, or anything, or any pity, because as soon as we feel pity, we're actually saying that they're less than we are. So that's my point of all this, saying all this, is kind of, if I look at someone like even Trump or someone like that, who is this volatile being, and I think he's going to express a lot of anger and pain and things to us, and we may not know why, and we may feel like, oh, shut up, jerk, just go away, or stop doing the terrible things you're doing. But really, if we can just hold space for a person, a human in pain, and just hear what he says without being triggered by it, then we can be released from the need. Like, I hear you, I hear what you had to say, you put your words out into the world, you're getting an energy of healing, but I don't have to do anything about what you're saying. I don't need to agree with it. I don't need to go along with you. Nothing. I can just carry on doing what I'm doing.
Well, I do have to say, talking of Donald, the eclipse is sitting on his Saturn and Venus. Jen and I looked at that just before we started, and that's that's certainly putting a little bit of pressure on him for sure. Not that I'm particularly feeling sorry for him, but we can kind of have this detached empathy. That just means we're not going to save them. And incidentally, if anybody wants to watch something just fun and short about expressing empathy without trying to fix, Brene Brown's 2-minute short on YouTube on empathy, a little cartoon thing, is fantastic. So just search that on YouTube, Brene Brown empathy, and you'll find it. And it shows you exactly kind of how to honor people's emotions and allow people's emotions without trying to fix them or tell or dismiss it, as Jen said, and say, oh, you'll be fine tomorrow, kind of thing. So that's a really good resource. Incidentally, though, as well, speaking of the Trumps, this eclipse is also sitting on Ivanka Trump's lunar nodes and is squaring her Jupiter and Pluto. We don't have a time of birth for her, so I don't know where it is in her chart. But it's interesting that she has been more prominent at the G20 meeting this week with this energy approaching. So just kind of watch what happens in their lives without getting too wrapped up in it, because that's being in the Capricorn energy again. We are going to be okay. We're through challenging times. This 2 weeks up to the next eclipse is volatile, but you can kind of stay out of it if you focus on the things Jen and I are suggesting. If you stay close to home. I have no intention, not that I like them anyway, but of going to like firework displays and things, because there is this volatility around, and I intend not turning the TV on tomorrow for whatever is happening in DC, because it's only gonna, you can protect yourself a little. It doesn't mean you don't read about it later, or doesn't mean you're ignoring it. It just means that you're not letting it take you out of yourself and your family. And incidentally, I did want to say as well, fear. There is a lot of fear involved in both Cancer and Capricorn signs. Capricorn is usually a fear of not being enough and never doing enough and things like that. We're being asked to release that because this is on the South Node, and we've been asked that over and over this year. And the North Node, there is the protective kind of fear, so we're not talking about the prepping kind of, if I prepare this out of fear in case of the zombie apocalypse kind of thing. This is just gentle protection and nurturing so that you're looking after your own. There's a difference coming at it from a place of love than from fear. So try to focus on the love, basically.
Yes, and being creative and focus
Yeah.
on, like, if you think about these energies of the female, and what I think is so important about these aspects of the female is they're destroying our version of what it means to be female. The old
Absolutely.
idea of that was the female propped up the male, the female propped up, if it wasn't for women like Ivanka Trump and her ilk, who have been conditioned to uphold the um, the standards for these men to, or whoever represents the patriarchy, to do whatever they want. Like, if you don't have all these people backing you up doing all this stuff, your party falls apart, your dream falls apart because people aren't doing it. So these daughters of the patriarchy, which I believe Ivanka is one, and she's, you know, to me it feels like there's a tentativeness around it, an uncertainty around it for her. She's playing a role, and you can just see, like, this is a role she's playing, and she's not enjoying it. And of course, the aspect of making money or doing all that and having power, clearly that's part of her upbringing, so she's pretty comfortable with that. But I saw like a clip of her.
Oh, with the G20 leaders.
Right. And it was like this little girl that had been prompted by her dad to say, go there and tell them what I want you to tell them. And she's kind of standing, you can tell, like, the way she's standing, like she's standing away from it, and she's talking, and everyone's kind of like looking like she's talking at them, and they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about, and we don't care.
I almost actually felt sorry for her a little bit.
But I think, again, like, when we say feel sorry for people, I know it's easy, and I don't, of course, I'm not telling you what to do, not that you'd listen, because I know you're opinionated, and that's a good thing.
Well, I wasn't feeling sorry for her.
But I'm just going to say this. Right?
Yeah.
Feeling sorry for people it's like we're taking away their power. Yeah. Everyone's a divine being. We're all equal, no matter how we act in the world. So it's recognizing you're making a choice. All of us are making choices. So we can make disempowered choices. We can make empowered choices. So looking at Donald or any of those people and saying, oh, I really feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for them. That's why
I said almost feel sorry for.
Right. But I also have to remind myself that these are empowered beings making choices, and we're all divinely led, and we get to do what we want to do. Like, how do we want to spend this creativity? How do we want to spend the abundance that's being given to us by the earth, that we can be here and do this in this body, be in this vessel, and fulfill whatever we desire. I did want to mention what I think is interesting about Eris is this idea. She is for me, I see her as the destructive force that is, what's the word? Discerning. It's a discerning force. She's not, when she comes in and she does the stuff, when she rolls the dice, when she throws things into, like, and Uranus in many ways is similar. There is no kind of emotion behind it. It's not out of spite. It's not out of a desire to.
It's not.
No, and it's more of, this is what needs to be done to move things along, to change the perspective. Like, this is what happens when we have some disaster happening. It kind of blows everything out of water, because you're going, I've been so focused on how I was feeling about this and how I was going to do this, and now this huge thing has happened, and none of that matters.
Interestingly, I did a webinar on Eris for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, and Julia, the lead, the kind of who runs the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, she said, "Well, Eris, what about all those stories in the myths of her being on the battlefield, bathed in blood and kind of reveling in the blood?" And I'm going, that's a part of us. There's a part of us that we really, she's not vindictive. It's not in that way. She doesn't rage, and it's not impulsive, but she knows that battle had to happen. So she's going, myths are gory like that. It doesn't, and our sensibilities go, oh, blood, bathed in blood. How could you revel in that? But there is a little part of that. When you know something's got to happen, you kind of think, oh, well, let's revel that this had to happen, kind of thing.
Right. I think there is a certain joy, even in this time for me. There's a part of me, of course, the human self is struggling with some of it, but the bigger part of me goes, this is so great. I'm excited about this.
The patriarch is dying at last.
Right. I mean, yes. I mean, there's some ugly scenes and people are in pain over it. But again, we have to recognize many of these, this is my belief, many of these souls came here to do this knowing. And in fact, I was at a spiritual group I go to once a month, and we do this meditation. We're taken through a meditation. The first part is more about connecting to ourselves. The second part is about sending light and love and energy to the world. And I had this vision while I was doing this. It was very powerful. I was like, brought me to tears. I had tears coming out my eyes, because I could see there were all these people. It was like me and everyone else in these rows and rows of people, and we were all wearing these, like, I don't know, drab clothes. Everyone was wearing like a uniform, right? It was like passing the light. I see the light in you, and you know, be enlightened, and you just see all these rows and these people just passing the light along, so everyone is lit up. And then I saw thousands of angels. Everyone was in these like creamy weird colors, but thousands of angels going to like all these people in these terrible situations, the kids, and imprisoned, and people just in suffering places, and they were just going and they were blessing everyone, and they were going, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. That makes me want to cry when I say that. But I think that idea of being grateful that there are people willing to do this, to take on these awful experiences, so they can give us an opportunity to change our mind. We are being given an opportunity to say, I'm not going to hold up this bullshit patriarchal system that has served so few. I'm refusing to do it. Right? It's up to us. Like, this is why we need the strength inside of us. This is why we need to look to these females that are the instigators of new belief, new ideas, because that's the intuition. That's where it all comes from, the desire and the willingness to, do what you need to do to bring new things into being, which includes sometimes being on the battlefield.
And it to my mind as well, it's all about reaching a state of deep acceptance that there is always going to be those who lose in major times, well, all the time really, and you cannot save everybody. To go back to the bigger scale, even in a less kind of emotive thing, in a discussion about if we switch to Medicare for all, somebody was going, so what about all these doctors who might have to, they're going to have to give up their private practice and things like that. I was like, if it's for the greater good, if it's more loving for the humanity as a whole, then it's tough, basic.
And it's all of us have to, if you talk about sacrifice, it's the sacrifice we are willing to make for the greater good. Like, we all have to do it. It's like people in the insurance business will have to do that. We all have to adjust, right? As there's things shifting, we're all going to have to give something up or go, okay.
And there'll be there'll be winners and losers. It's like, some will be gain more and some will lose more, is what I'm saying.
Well, but in the end,
winners but in the end, it's for the greater good. So
that's the thing, is I think a lot of people get very fixated, but what about me, and what about what I've had in the past? But if you think about starting over, this is that line, what do they call it? It's kind of the line of change, where just you lose everything. We all lose everything we've ever had, so that we can all come new and go, oh, I get my share of what there is, instead of I had that, so I want as much. It's like, that is not going to work going forward. Like, we're just going to continue to suffer and complain unless we recognize, like, that's it. We're all starting afresh. This is a new time. It's what Eris does, right?
Exactly.
Idea and Athena and the series. It's like, okay, playing field, everyone get out there, right?
Yeah.
And whatever you receive in the game.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with it?
Just the way Eris kind of shook up the astronomy world when she was discovered. You know, there was no designation of dwarf planet when before Eris was discovered, and then Pluto was demoted and Ceres was promoted. Not that I care about the astronomers; they're still all important energies to me, so I don't care if they're planets, dwarf planets, or asteroids. Particularly,
yeah, but it does show, right, that
but
the
it shows
female
the strength of her. Yeah,
have been raised in importance.
yeah.
And I did want to mention the thing about what you were saying about the blood thing on the battlefield. I find it really interesting. There's a lot of stories of these different goddesses, Sekhmet, there's a bunch of them that are, these goddesses that are said to come forward, or they're being called when things need to shift and come forward, and they create a bloody battlefield, and they get hooked into blood.
Yeah.
I do think that is, part of the male or the patriarchal explanation of this. Obviously women are crazy, and they can't control themselves when they have such bloodlust. All of that. To me, that's total bullshit.
Nobody cares that men go out and get
right. Exactly.
That's their role.
Raping women to kind of bring down there. This is what they do because they build up so much bloodlust. This is part of why they do all that. You don't hear about women doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just them. This is what we do. We put our fears and our ugly behaviors that we don't want to accept on someone else so that they can be responsible. And hey, maybe some women do have some bloodlust and some others don't. But if you think about when we talk about being in balance, that the female, this is about inspiration, new ideas, and then the action that is taken after that, right? Yeah. That's the male and female working together.
I think as well there's some reference to the fear of the menstrual blood kind of thing as well, to be honest. The whole red tent thing, with all these myths, it's like women are pretty powerful when they're on their cycles, and so that comes into it too, pretty much, I believe. So
plus jealousy. I mean, we don't have time to go into the whole thing, but there's a whole jealousy, and remembering that having blood is what gives women the ability to give birth. So men hated that part because when you look in the tarot at the card number 6, the lovers, in the what is it called? Anyway, the woman is looking at the divine, and the man is looking at the woman. So we know, the power comes from the woman, from the inspiration, or from the female side of ourselves, right?
Creative.
That's how. Exactly.
Well, we're at an hour, and we've still got to look at our questions. So let's look at the questions, and then we'll just remind you of the giveaway one more time. Oh, symbols first, actually. I'll go with the Chandra symbol first this time again.
Okay.
And it's Capricorn 25. It's a woman wearing a mask made out of butterfly wings, wrapped in customary trappings, made to look and act the part superbly, programmed to do everything on cue, taking yourself in hand and subordinating all other factors to ambition, power, and worldly position in a premeditated, systematic, super orderly fashion fitting the role. So good at this, you fool yourself. The perfect wraparound setup of simply turning yourself into what everybody needs to see. But because there is so much manipulation and control in it, this can become highly corrupted. It all depends on the motivation. At best, you will become a viable role model for a given set of characteristics of an advanced kind to be embodied perfectly. But at worst, you will deceive and beguile and maneuver so smoothly that nobody will know what you serve, who your master is, and where all this comes from after all. Like often, I see these symbols as a bit of a warning that if you are keeping to those trappings of the rules, society, the man out there, this is what's going to happen. You'll be wearing this mask, and it's made out of butterfly wings, though, so you can rip it off if you like, because they're very fine. So,
Right.
or you can transform the butterfly too. So, yeah,
Yes, very powerful.
Yeah,
I think it speaks to what we've been talking about. So that's very interesting in a sense. Kind of like I get the picture of Ivanka Trump or people like her, right? And we all have that inside of us. Like we all have the ability to be a pleaser instead of pleasing ourselves and the divine within us. So
exactly.
So the Sabian symbol, Capricorn 25, an Oriental rug dealer. This is the symbol of the irrevocability of man's obligation to the reality of which he is part, with the emphasis on his accumulated knowledge or acquired skills as an indication of his enduring competency on the more immediate or practical side. Self-expression here is one of the various advantages and resources as actually a commerce in human potentialities, and this becomes an individual's real service to his fellows. Eternal values are meaningless unless they are woven into the fabric of humanity's familiar transactions. The key word is consignment. When positive, the degree is an effective employment of the facilities and goods of a modern society, and when negative, concern over trivialities.
All that we've been talking about again. Wow. Yeah, I don't think the message of this eclipse could be any clearer, to be honest. So, and the time leaving up to it. I have to laugh for those of you that are watching on video, by the way. This is my mind shirt.
Right.
This is my bottom. It's mine, meaning, hands off the JJ. But this is kind of resonant to what we're talking about as well, because we're looking into what's really ours and not what's, not all the material stuff that's mine. So anyway, I didn't wear it on purpose. I suddenly was like, oh yeah, that kind of fits. Anyway, the question. Okay, we have a lovely couple of questions from Genevieve, who is in Canada. Welcome to our podcast. So we'll take it in two parts. I think we're going to have to be pretty quick with the answers, though, because we're over the hour. But she says, first, I've always been told that kids were more aware of energies. As an adult, I have the knowledge about how to calm myself down and recognize the signs of being disturbed by, for example, full moon energy. How can we help a little 3-year-old kid to anchor itself and actually deal with it? Do you have any trick for that?
Are you looking at me?
Yes.
All right. So 3-year-old is harder because it's harder to communicate. For me, what I think is the most important for any child is to know that what they're experiencing is real. They are experiencing it, instead of dismissing it and saying, oh, there's nothing happening, you'll be okay. To let them emit what they're doing and to tell them, it's okay, this is the moon, you're feeling this or that, or tell me, or do a drawing. So allow them to express how they feel and to confirm that it is real. And also show them love, like hold them, give them, express love so they feel safe, because that's really the two things that we need the most, and that's most of us are damaged most about, is being told what we're saying is bullshit and being denied love because we're not conforming.
So I would agree with both of those things. One other suggestion I just came to mind as Jen was talking was, as well as that if you have knowledge of the elements involved, kids are very elemental. So say if it's a lot strong watery energy and they're full of emotion, get them around water, let them sink in, they'll have a long play in the bath. If it's earth energy, get them playing in the dirt, and it will just soothe them. Because if it's fire, don't get them real fire, but get them being very active. Fire's very active, and if it's air, then maybe talk to them and read to them and things. there's ways to kind of tune them in with the energies better. But I think Jen's points were the most important, but the elemental side is important too, I think. So.
Right, and I'll just briefly add to that, you can introduce movement,
Mm-hmm.
scent, all kinds of things to help you with those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
And
essential oils and things would be
right,
good too,
exactly.
you know. Yeah.
And just show how you feel, express how you feel, like, you know, so the child has something to emulate. Like, what are you doing? Are you doing yoga? You're sitting in peace, you know, finding your center. How do you do it? So your child can emulate that.
Get them doing the yoga with you.
Right.
So, and the other question was, we are getting in a really intense period. Is there prediction of easier and softer times? She says, I know these intense moments are necessary to move forward, but I was wondering if we will see the light after the tunnel. Well, I will say that I do, you know, it's never over. Jen and I were laughing before we started as we talked over what we were going to do. And I get questions of like, when will it end? And I'm like, well, I don't say this, but I'm thinking, well, when you're dead. But, but no, but this is a really intense time. I do think things are going to be a little bit easier after this major conjunction of Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Sun, Ceres. Is there anything else in there? Everything's coming together in Capricorn next January. I do think things are going to start to ease a little bit, you know, but we are in the time between actual astrological ages. We are shifting from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We are both blessed and cursed in a way to be born in a time with a shifting of the ages, and with all these energies and cycles converging. But yes, I think there is some light. Definitely, this year is definitely a big challenge, and so is early 2020. But I think things will be a little easier after that. So.
Yeah. So my feeling about all of this is these are opportunities. These very difficult times are opportunities for us to learn how to deal with what's happening. All these things outside of us, and I think we spoke about it quite a bit in this session. But it's an opportunity to remind yourself. You know, one of the most powerful things we can do is recognize that what's happening outside of us, or what we are being drawn to or feel stressed about, is something connected to a wound inside of us. So an expression you can use is I am that, which is something apparently from the Bible. I am that. I am that I am, right? This idea, whatever's happening outside of you, whatever this turmoil is connecting to some fear inside of you. So it's recognizing, why is this stirring me? Why am I feeling perturbed by it? And what do I need? Do I need more quiet time? Do I need a better conversation? I think it's really important that we begin to, as we are communicating with each other and recognizing what's happening, that we communicate by asking questions instead of assuming. And we can ask ourselves, what am I making this mean? Why do I feel stressed about all this stuff happening to me? You know, do I need to learn something? Sorry, go ahead.
Questions are always good because they open up possibilities, always. You know, and I always call these things an opportunity too, you know. But this year is tough, but you could say that because it's tougher, there are more opportunities, you know. But that's why it's important to kind of, not just us, but listen to kind of people who kind of understand the map of the cycles and what we're being called to do, and kind of listen and follow the advice, or do whatever's right for you that pops up as you're listening. But you know, the big focus, as we've talked about this call and many times with the nodes in North Node in Cancer, is about self-love and sustainability, things like that. And it might take a bit of courage, but the more you kind of face up to it and say, hey, how can I do this with ease almost, then it will come along, you know.
Exactly. And how can I love myself through this? That's a
Yeah.
great point about love. It's just being gentle, because we tend to have such high expectations about how we think we're supposed to behave, instead of just being, I'm okay with being in fear. What
Exactly.
do I need? Maybe I just need to comfort myself. It's okay, right? Because if you do that, you have more energy to deal. I also think it's a good idea to have readings,
Yeah.
do energy work, go and do stuff that you feel aligned to, because that will support you in
It will.
enormous ways, right?
Yeah, it
So this is how we
definitely.
change. We change through challenge. We're not going to change if everything's comfortable.
So on that note, getting readings and things, enter our giveaway.
Yes.
No, we're doing this for the eclipses. We've also been going just over a year now. I actually look back and we started in May, so we're a little bit overdue. But it suddenly occurred to us that we'd been going over a year, and we were like, "Oh, perfect timing for the eclipses." So get those reviews in, share on social media, send us the screenshots to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, and see if you win one of the readings, or one of our books. Both of those would help you as well. So, and keep listening to the podcast as well. So, Jen, how can everybody find you online?
So they can find me at jendushen.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook under Jen Dushen. I have a group in Facebook called the Light Club of the what is it called? The Light Club of the
The woo-woo weirdos of the world.
Leaders of the World. And I am doing a 30 days every day. I'm doing a little post on soul nourishment. So, that's a great way. You can just join me on Instagram or on Facebook and just read or join in. And I do have my card stuff on my website, jendushen.com/illuminating journey cards. So you can find me on my website, on the internet.
And similarly, louiseeddington.com. My name is my website. I have, obviously, I offer readings. I also have a membership site with their various levels of rewards, similar to Patreon, but on my own site. I have a Facebook group called Planetary Magic Cafe. That I am doing a morning pages challenge. It was going to be a 30-day challenge, which would end tomorrow, but we decided to keep it going right through July because everybody's loving doing it. And I'm posting every day to remind you to do the morning challenges, and that's a completely free thing. And morning pages are one of the best personal development tools in the world. So come join us. It's not too late to join. It doesn't matter that we've been doing it for 30 days. You begin when you begin. So otherwise, there's my book, Modern Astrology, copy available as a prize for the giveaway. If you don't have it yet, why not? If you do, please leave me an Amazon review as well. Reviews are everything for podcasts, books, everything. So, if we could ask you to do those reviews for us, that would be really helpful to us. So I think that's all my bits. Oh, I'm on Instagram too, Louise Eddington, and Twitter, but on Twitter I mostly do the politics. All right then. So for now, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.